calling this game Satisfaction because it's just very satisfying the way the mate unfolded. Black, king pawn, and then I used this little ultra defensive return. I can't even remember what it's called now. Not the French defence when it's the queen pawn. No, I don't know what it is. Anyway, and then again ultra defensive again. So just controlling the black squares in the middle there, controlling the light squares on the king's side. And then get the fianchetto ready. I'm not a fan of fianchettoing without thinking. But here I'm definitely thinking about it. It's definitely a really measured move. I only fianchetto when it's a measured move, when I really know I want it. And I have a great deal of disrespect for players that just fianchetto out of habit. But that's just one of my things. And out come the knights. Out comes his bishop. Out I come just to pin the knight. Might as well add some pressure there.
Kinside castling. Kinside castling.
And we both castle. And I would say that nobody has the upper hand. Perhaps I ought to be thinking next about pushing that e-pawn forward to just like completely seal it up, because this is an ultra defensive. And also perhaps pushing the b-pawn a square forward just to defend. Because, as I say, it's an ultra-defensive fortress type of game I'm playing here. And the idea with my ultra-defensive game is that I create such a strong positional defence that any attempt to break through weakens the opponent's position. And that's the basic strategy that I employ. When I'm playing against a player who is as good as me or better, I have to play ultra-defensive. And that's how I play. I just will work hard on my position. Look for opportunities, look for slips, look for mistakes, and wait for my opponent to try and break through. And if my fortress is good enough positionally, hopefully a crack then will show in his position. So out comes his other knight. I don't bring the knight out, I bring the queen out because I have had an idea that he wants to keep that bishop by his king, and I'm going to force him to exchange it. Thus, so he has to exchange that bishop. He puts the knight here, signalling that he really, really doesn't want to exchange it. And he's going to, whether he likes it or not. I could have just toyed with him by doing that again, but there's no point. This retreated his knight, which loses him some tempi as well. As you see, I'm more developed than him now. He's a bit cramped up there. And this would be a good moment to push the e-pawn forward. But I didn't. I wonder if it might have been a better move to do that there. But then he probably would have tried a breakthrough move like this. And then after this, I don't think I have the best of it. So instead, out came the knight here, and trying to invite him to advance the g-pawn, which he doesn't do. And then out comes his bishop. And I just did a bugging move here, just to bug him. Make it go back a bit, and then push the pawn forward. Then he comes to here, and I can just take. And that's all okay. I perhaps should have taken instead of coming past. I don't know. But the idea was I needed to try and break into his position here somehow. But he goes for this, and of course, by doing this, I have to take the knight. Lose the knight or take it off, and then I lose the pawn. I have to lose the pawn because it will be doubly attacked, potentially. This would be the moment to push the e-pawn. And now we are at a sort of middle game area. Interesting. It's not really a good idea to stick your queen in front of someone else's rook. It's not the only misjudgment he showed in relation to the queen, actually. So now where's he going to put this knight? Well, he goes back with it again. This player's actually quite good at playing in a cramped position, I have to say. And it's time to bring out my knight, because I've been playing with one hand tied behind my back so far. He's been using his knights, kind of. And now he decides that his advance is going to be on the queen's side. this knight can't do anything where it was. As you see, it can't really advance to those forward squares, so it made more sense to bring it back and try and get it onto a different dark square. So hoping to get it in front of my rook there, so that it's a bit more central. Got a few more options. And here came the advance, and I ignored it and just brought the knight up to where I'd wanted it. And now he locks off that pawn there. And I push this pawn forward. Why did I do that? I have no idea why I did that. I remember making that move, but I can't remember why I did it. I think I was just generally thinking of moving the queenside rook pawns forward. But I can't remember quite what the idea was with that move. May have just been an idea that I was basically defending with the queen in advance. So by moving it to that square, it's now potentially defended by the queen once I've moved the knight out of the way. If you see, it's not defended at there, but it'll be defended by the queen there eventually. I think that might have been what I was planning to do. And also simultaneously prevent the advance of the c pawn, or at least slow it down. And he comes forward with this. He doesn't like me advancing here, so I realise that here I've got a nice doubly protected pawn if I do this. And he goes for the interesting option. The confusion option. This is always confusing when you see this position with the block of pawns. It's never very clear how it's going to turn out. It really can be confusing. So he goes for obfuscation, and I go to take the one that's marked by the knight. Of course, I now can't recapture because the knight has to move out of the way, at which point it won't be marking that pawn. So that was a good move from him, and then it's check. So I have to just take the rook and get that out of the way. Now what do? I mean, I could go for, I don't know, like a double passed pawn idea, but it didn't seem that good an idea. So I could even have potentially gone for this. But again, just didn't seem good enough. Instead, right off the pawn, maybe try and recapture it in a minute. It's not yet a passed pawn, so it's not to panic yet. And then he does this, so I won't be able to grab it with the queen now. Until that pawn's been shifted, that c pawn. So we come over here with the rook, and this I should be able to clear it up now. And although he defends it with that, now after this, it's a bit difficult for him to have any say in what happens to that pawn now. So I can just grab it, he captures, and after this, he decides he does not want to exchange the rook very wisely, because I'll have a queen, 2 knights, and a passed pawn. So I've won all the pawn exchanges now, finally.
Check.
Surprisingly. I don't know if this was the right square to move. Perhaps should have moved here, so I'm defending the knight that's by the queen, so the queen can move. Might not have been a good idea. I wanted to defend that pawn at the end, but I didn't need to. I had a knight defending it, and I hadn't realised that I had a knight defending it. So those 2 knights are pretty nasty to try and get past with the rook. And now it's just time to push the pawn. Just do the Philidor thing and push. Attacks the rook, not a problem. Move it up to here. Pushes a pawn here. Just lock it up. And now, of course, the ideal would be me to move the h-pawn up as well. Of course, he can't have that, so he gives a check straight away. And instead of capturing, which would be really not very good, is if I capture, we can get into some quite nasty situations here. Now I'm sort of getting lasered by his rook and his queen, so we really didn't want to capture there. Better to use his pawn as his own obstacle there by just moving away, and now I'm on the square that I originally had wanted to retreat to. It's actually quite hard for his queen to get down to give a check now. Even if she moves across to here, she can't come down to the checking square because my knight's guarding it, so that's all pretty good. It's all pretty safe. Comes up to here with the rook. I think he didn't realise I had a knight guarding my pawn there, so I ignored that and instead just pushed that pawn yet further. Queen comes over to here. Not quite sure what the idea is. I think he's thinking in terms of getting through that invisible pawn there somehow. Don't know. And I took that pawn. Because either way, if he recaptures with the queen, then I get a queen, then I can queen on the pawn.
Check.
No, I can't. That was an error, actually, wasn't it? That knight move. He could have recaptured with the queen. I was thinking, yeah, that was an error. I don't know why he didn't just recapture in that case with the queen.
Check.
Comes up with the check here. Now that I've moved the knight, you see, I can't cover that square, but up to here. Yeah, and now he could have just captured with the queen with check, and I don't think he saw it somehow. Oh no, of course, look, my rook was guarding that knight. I beg your pardon, my rook was guarding the knight. So
check.
Even if he had done this, no, he couldn't do that. Even if he'd done this, we would have had that.
Motion to queen.
Yeah, okay, so he was still tied up there. I just cleared that up. I'd forgotten my own rook was sitting there, because my rook is unguarded, and it's a bit bizarre that it's unguarded and still doing its job pretty damned well. But, of course, the knight is covering the squares that the queen needs to be on to attack the rook right now. Queen is having trouble getting onto the squares to attack my rook.
Check.
So out comes the other check, and now my king forks. A very rare thing, a king fork. King forking the rook and the pawn. And now he attacks the knight here, the rook here, and of course this is absolutely fatal. It's totally the wrong thing to do because I'm one square from queening.
Motion to queen.
And he will now have to get rid of his own queen in order to destroy mine.
Check.
With check, and now he's very, very backward on material. Moves his king to here, and I come down to here, again a fork, forking the pawn and the knight. And after this, we can just snap up that pawn, effectively pinning the other knight against the king for a revealed check.
Check.
And he comes up with a check here, a move of a desperate man, and I can simply take the pawn, and now I'm attacking his rook. His rook can only move to this square. All other squares are marked. And it's now just a question of check here.
Check.
A check here. Should have taken it with the knight.
Check.
Check here. And finally,
checkmate.
Queen just slides up through that gap to give a lovely checkmate. So that was a really satisfying checkmate, really, in a real melee. A real melee that was. You know, the battle was everywhere. There was nowhere to hide. I mean, there were no safe spaces for my king, for his king. It was all a real melee, and a very satisfying check.